What do you say we demystify channel strip routing and sidechain together? Welcome to the very first segment of the Music Pro, where we offer professional recording objectives to help you discover your own creative and technical hacks to make your best records. I am your host, Shay Alexander Wright, and it is my pleasure to share with you some of my own common practices and discoveries in music production, engineering, and even artist development, which I've written a book that a number of you might actually find helpful while developing projects with artists of your own, and you can find that link below. In this segment, we're going to talk about something that I hear very few people talk about: internal channel strip routing and signal flow, and how the versatility in this technology can open us up to even more transparent results in our mixes. But before I get to the topic at hand, I want to say thanks for tuning in. I'm starting this forum to be an open discussion of ideas and approaches, and I'm welcoming any ideas of your own to be shared in the comments below. There are more than 1,000 ways to proverbially skin a cat, and even though there are a few people on this platform who emphatically insist that there's only one way to do most things, it simply isn't so when it comes to music and recording. And even as we have great and helpful technological advances making our work so much easier these days, what we do in the studio is still an art form, and how we express ourselves in it is completely up to us. So I'm encouraging us all to stand strong in this principle. So, if you like what you see and you like what you hear, please help me out. Smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel so that we can keep these conversations going and the creativity flowing. Now, one of the remarkable things about the modern mixing consoles like the Solid State Logic and Neve desks of the last 40 years or so is the number of ways to increase the level of transparency to their already naturally transparent characteristics. One particular way to achieving increased transparency is through the internal routing and sidechain options incorporated right on the channel strip modules themselves. A channel strip is typically made of three components, right? Filters, equalizers, and dynamics. And the ability to arrange these components within the channel strip allows us to determine what order we want sound and signal to be affected going through to the module's output. This is what's known as routing. How a sound or instrument appears in a mix can change based on how these three components are arranged. Routing also gives us an opportunity to determine what parts of the sound we want affected by the dynamic section. Now, moving on to sidechain, let's review what sidechain is. Sidechain is a process typically referred to in the use of compression, where the effect of the compressor is controlled by the level of another instrument or sound. This can also be applied to noise gates, which at the end of this segment, I'm going to demonstrate with the track that I'm currently mixing. Another way of explaining this is sidechaining allows us to control one track using the dynamics of another, like in EDM music when we want to create that pumping effect, and also in hip hop when we want to maintain adequate space and transparency between the low frequency stuff like kicks and 808s, as well as helping snares cut through the mix. As you guys already know, sidechain dynamics can add a lot of energy and rhythm to your mixes while ensuring crucial elements don't clash. Now, sidechain used within the channel strip module essentially means the dynamics components on the channel strip are going to disregard or ignore the parameters engaged between the equalizer and filter. So if the sidechain is engaged via the EQ, the dynamic section is going to compress, expand, or gate everything except the EQ parameter is focused on. If engaged via the filters, the channel strip dynamics are going to respond to everything between the filter parameters and essentially avoid the frequencies outside your high and low pass filters. Now, the arrangement or order of signal flow between the module components determines how the sound reaching the dynamic section is affected. If the dynamic section is at the top of the chain, all the sound is going to be compressed and expanded or gated before reaching the filters in the EQ. If the dynamics are at the end of the chain, then the filters and EQ are going to shape the sound before being compressed, expanded, or gated. And likewise, you can put the dynamic section in the middle of these two components to get a completely different reaction and alternate effect from the compressor, expander, or gate, depending on which component goes before or after. let's turn to the desk and put some of these things into practice so you can hear a bit of what I'm talking about. So I've got the track up that I was talking about a couple minutes ago. Real quick, this is really critical listening. Even though there is change in tone, it's really subtle because remember, we're adding more transparency to an environment that's already very naturally transparent. So you might want to put on a good pair of headphones or check out whatever reference monitors you use in the studio or any other environment so that you can hear what's going on, as subtle as it is. I'm going to focus on the synth bass here, which is going to be my low frequency stuff, and then a snare drum that's happening later. And the synth bass, the sidechain dynamics are actually being, or the dynamics are being activated via sidechain external. The kick drum and main snare drum are what's activating that. So, and I'm using the SSL channel strip 2. Everything's in the SSL 360 environment, and I do have the bus compressor. Now I have it bypassed so that you can hear what's going on wide open. Okay, let's see. Okay. So this is that's the synth bass I'm talking about. Okay. So right now what you're hearing is the sidechain is activated via external source and the EQ focuses are what's getting out of the way. I pushed it even more forward. Okay. That's pushing it back a little bit. It's just the filters activating it. Push back a little more. I'm gonna go back to where I had it. So that's where it sits good to me. That pushes it even more forward, but I like it sitting back here. Okay, now let's go over to that snare drum that I was talking about. So you see the filters. So the dynamics can actually be activated based on the filters, the EQ. So here, I just have the filters activating the compressor. See how that kind of pushed it back? The filters and the EQ are responding, or the dynamics are responding to the filters and the EQ. Put it back. See, now it's sitting a little bit more forward in the mix, okay? Now, let's go over to, I have a gated guitar that's actually activated by the cajon. Okay. And I'm using the Antelope Audio Comp 4K strip as the gate. This is what it is, bypassed. That's what the guitar is on its own. But I want to get a totally different rhythm out of the guitar, like a totally different sort of pattern or motif. So I chose the cajon, and that's how I'm getting it to react. Maybe another episode I'll actually go through adjusting some of that. But those are just a couple of tips that, or a couple of ways that I'm implementing the channel strip routing and sidechain in my mixes, particularly this mix. And remember, it's just ideas, so you can kind of mess around and experiment in your own mixes. My links are at the bottom. ShayAlexanderWright.com is the website. The book, the Complete Artist Development Series, book number 1, The Collaboration. Links to that for purchase are also down below. And I'm going to have another segment that you can check out while I explain exactly what that book's all about. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. I'm Shay Alexander.